They tried everything, only humans succeeded. The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was silent. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, their faces showing fear, sadness, and defeat. The massive holographic display in the center of the room showed a star that was dying. Its surface bubbled and twisted with violent energy. Scientists had studied it for months. Their conclusion was always the same. The star would explode. Nothing could stop it. Ambassador once sat in the small human section near the back of the hall. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 80 years. They were the youngest species here. Their technology was simple compared to others. Their ships were slower. Their weapons were weaker. Most species treated humans with polite kindness, the way an adult might treat a child who wanted to sit at the grown-up table. One did not mind this treatment. He had learned patience during his 30 years as a diplomat. He watched and listened while others spoke. Today, everyone was speaking about death. Hai stood at the central platform. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected the light from the dying star on the display. Her species, had led the assembly for 2,000 years. They were wise and fair, but today even looked tired. "The sun will explode in 90 cycles," said. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. "When it does, 12 billion will die. Their planet will be destroyed. Their civilization will end." A wave of whispers moved through the hall. They were a peaceful species. They had never fought in any war. They shared their art and music freely with the galaxy. They were kind to everyone they met, and now they were going to die. The prime speaker sat in the front row. His name was Aurel, and he was very old. His blue skin had faded to pale gray over his long life. He listened to his words with closed eyes. He had already accepted his death. He only wished he could save his people. "We have tried everything," continued. "Every solution has failed. I will now review what has been attempted." She pressed a button, and the display changed to show a massive machine floating near the dying star. The contributed gravitational stabilizers. These machines can hold planets in place and redirect asteroids. They hope to stabilize the star's core. Paused. The machines were destroyed within hours. The star's energy was too strong. The representative, a being made of living stone, lowered his head in shame. His species was proud of their engineering. They had never failed before. The display changed again, showing strange wave patterns around the star. The attempted temporal delay fields. They hope to slow the star's collapse, giving us more time for evacuation. His voice grew heavier. The fields had no effect. The star's mass was too great for temporal manipulation. They floated in their water-filled observation chamber. They did not speak. Their tentacles hung limp with sadness. "The calculated all possible evacuation plans," said. "Using every ship in the galaxy, working without rest, we could save 3% of the population. 360 million people. The other 11 billion would be left behind." Aurel finally opened his eyes. "We will not choose who lives and who dies," he said quietly. "If we cannot save everyone, we will not save anyone. We will face the end together as one people." One felt his heart tighten. He had met traitors before. They had given him a gift once, a small crystal that played beautiful music when light touched it. They had asked for nothing in return. That was simply how they were. Looked around the hall. "Does any species have a new proposal? Any idea we have not yet considered?" One by one, representatives shook their heads. They had nothing. They had nothing. They had nothing. Species that had traveled between stars for 10,000 years had no answers. "Humanity," asked, turning to face one, "does your species have any contribution to offer?" Several representatives made sounds that might have been laughter. One understood. What could humans possibly do? They were children playing with toys while the adults faced real problems. One stood up slowly. He straightened his formal coat and walked to the center platform. Every eye in the hall watched him, some with curiosity, most with doubt. "Hi," one said. "I request 24 hours to consult with specialists on Earth." "For what purpose?" asked. Her voice was not unkind, but it held no hope either. "To study the problem," one replied simply. The representative made a grinding sound. "We have studied this problem for 6 months. Your species has been traveling between stars for less than a century. What do you hope to find that we missed?" One looked at the stone being calmly. "I do not know yet. That is why I need to ask." Considered this for a moment. Then she nodded. 24 hours. We will reconvene then." She looked at one with something like pity. "I admire your determination, Ambassador, but I do not want you to raise false hopes." "I would never do that," one said. "I only ask for the chance to try." He returned to his seat and immediately activated his communication device. The signal would take several minutes to reach Earth, even using the fastest channels. He typed a message and sent it to one person. Doctor, head of Earth's Emergency Response Initiative. She had spent her entire career solving problems that others said could not be solved. Earthquakes, floods, pandemics. She had led teams that saved millions of lives. One's message was short. 12 billion lives, 90 cycles. Everyone says impossible. I need you to prove them wrong. The minutes passed slowly. Around him, representatives talked quietly among themselves. Some were already discussing memorial services for the. Others were debating how to distribute the refugees who would survive the partial evacuation. No one was discussing solutions anymore. Then his device beeped. A response from Earth from. One opened the message with trembling fingers. It contained only 8 words, but they made his heart race with hope. "Show me the problem, all of it." He began gathering every piece of data about the dying star, every failed solution, every calculation, every report. He sent it all to Earth, to a woman who had never accepted the word impossible. Around him, the galaxy had given up. 47 species had looked at the numbers and seen no path forward. They saw only death. But on a small blue planet far from the dying star, a team was about to wake up. They would look at the same numbers. They would see the same death, but they would not stop there. They would find a way, because that was what humans did. One closed his eyes and waited. In the holographic display, the star continued to die, and somewhere in the galaxy, hope was still alive. They tried everything, only humans succeeded. Doctor had not slept in 36 hours. Empty coffee cups covered her desk like small soldiers standing guard. Her eyes burned from staring at screens. Her back ached from sitting too long. But she did not stop. She could not stop. 12 billion lives waited for her answer. The Emergency Response Initiative headquarters was alive with activity. Engineers ran between rooms carrying tablets. Scientists argued in hallways. Phone calls came every few minutes from government officials asking for updates. Ignored them all. She focused only on the data. The dying star filled her main screen. Its surface moved like boiling water in a pot. Waves of energy rose and fell. Deep inside, the core was collapsing. When it finally gave way, the explosion would destroy everything within 50 light years. "It is beautiful in a terrible way," said Du, the astrophysicist. He stood beside, studying the same images. His hair was messy from running his hands through it too many times. "The amount of energy in that star is beyond imagination. We cannot fight it. We cannot redirect it. It is simply too powerful." "Then we do not fight it," said quietly. Du looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean?" Before could answer, the door opened. Jin walked in, carrying a thick folder of papers. She was the logistics specialist, responsible for moving people and supplies during emergencies. She had once coordinated the evacuation of 2 million people during a super typhoon. She knew how to move things quickly. "I reviewed the evacuation calculations," Jin said. She dropped the folder on the table. "They are correct. With every ship in the galaxy working at maximum speed, we can only save 3%. The math does not lie. I hate that math, said Nam Gi from his corner of the room. That was examining holographic images of anatomy. He was younger than the others with bright eyes that never stopped moving. They are fascinating creatures. Their biology has features I have never seen before. It would be a tragedy to lose them. Stood up and walked to the center of the room. Her team watched her. They had worked with her for years. They knew that look on her face. She was about to say something important. Every alien species approached this as a physics problem, said. The star is exploding. How do we stop the explosion? Or how do we move people away from it fast enough? She pointed at the data on the screens. They tried to fight the star. They tried to outrun the star. Both approaches failed. Because both approaches are impossible, Du said. The energy involved is too great. Exactly, smiled slightly. So we need a third approach, one that does not fight the star or run from it. Jin leaned forward. What are you suggesting? Turned to Guy. Tell me about biology. You said they have unusual features. What kind? Guy jumped up eagerly. He waved his hand and the holographic display changed to show the inside of a body. They evolved on a planet with extreme seasons. For half their year, temperatures dropped to nearly 200 degrees below zero. Their ancestors survived by entering a hibernation state. Their hearts slow down. Their brains enter a kind of sleep. They can survive in this state for months without food, water, or air. Do they still have this ability? Asked. Technically, yes, but they have not used it in 6,000 years. Their technology made it unnecessary. They heated their cities and homes. Hibernation became something from ancient history. Guy paused. Why do you ask? Did not answer immediately. She walked to the window and looked out at the city of. Ships moved in the harbor. People walked on streets. Life continued normally for everyone except her team. The other species tried to save them by moving them away from danger, said slowly. But there are too many and not enough ships. Evacuation is impossible within 90 cycles. We already know this, Jin said with frustration. But what if we did not move turned back to face her team? What if we moved their planet instead? Silence filled the room. Du's mouth opened but no words came out. Jin stared. Guy dropped his tablet. Move the planet, Du finally managed. That is insane. Planets are massive objects. You cannot just push them around. The star explosion will release enormous energy, said. Energy that will destroy everything in its path. But energy is also force. Force can push things. Du's eyes widened as he understood. You want to use the explosion itself, ride the shockwave. The enter hibernation, continued, her voice getting faster as the idea took shape. They can survive extreme cold and do not need air for months. We freeze the planet. All 12 billion go to sleep. Then we use the explosion's energy to push the planet into a new orbit around a different star. Jin shook her head. The heat from the explosion would kill everyone. The radiation alone would be deadly. We put satellites in orbit, replied. Thousands of them, designed to absorb heat and redirect radiation, a shield around the planet. Where do we get thousands of satellites in 90 cycles? Jin demanded. We build them, we get other species to help, we work without stopping. Du grabbed a tablet and began running calculations. His fingers moved across the screen at incredible speed. Numbers appeared and disappeared. Charts formed and reformed. After several minutes, he looked up with surprise on his face. It could work, he whispered. The physics is actually possible. If we position everything correctly, if we time the hibernation perfectly, if the satellites absorb enough heat. He shook his head in amazement. It is the most dangerous plan I have ever seen, but it could work. Guy was already pulling up information about hibernation. I would need to go to their planet, teach them how to use abilities they have forgotten. It would take weeks to prepare the population. Jin stared at for a long moment. Then she laughed, but it was not a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just seen the impossible become possible. "You want me to coordinate the largest logistics operation in human history," Jin said, "building and launching thousands of satellites, moving supplies across dozens of star systems, all in 90 cycles." "Can you do it?" asked. Jin thought for several seconds, then she nodded slowly. "I will need every favor I have ever earned, every connection, every resource Earth can spare, but yes, I can do it." Looked at her team. These were the best people she knew. They had saved lives together many times before, but this would be their greatest challenge. "Prepare a full proposal," ordered. "Every detail, every calculation, every risk. We present it to the Galactic Assembly in 18 hours. The team scattered to their stations. Computers hummed, data flowed, plans took shape. Returned to her desk and typed a message to Ambassador 1. It contained the basic outline of their plan. At the end, she added one sentence that she knew would shock the entire galaxy. "We are going to freeze an entire planet and ride the shockwave to safety." She pressed send and leaned back in her chair. Outside, the sun was setting over. Somewhere far away, another sun was dying, and humanity was about to attempt the impossible. They tried everything, only humans succeeded. The Galactic Assembly Hall was more crowded than Ambassador 1 had ever seen it. Word had spread that humans had a plan. Most species came to watch out of curiosity. Some came to laugh. A few came because they still had hope. One stood at the central platform, his hands steady even though his heart was racing. Behind him, a holographic screen displayed the human proposal. Doctor appeared next to him as a life-sized hologram, transmitted from Earth. She looked tired but determined. Hai sat in her elevated chair, watching them with her ancient silver eyes. "The Assembly recognizes Ambassador 1 of Earth and Doctor. You may present your proposal." One took a deep breath. "Thank you, Hai. What we are about to suggest will sound impossible, but we ask only that you listen until the end." He activated the display. The dying star appeared, along with Prime orbiting dangerously close to it. "Every previous solution has tried to stop the explosion or evacuate the population," one began. "We propose a different approach. We will not stop the explosion. We will not evacuate the people. Instead, we will use the explosion itself to save them." Whispers spread through the hall. Several representatives leaned forward with interest. Took over her holographic form, moving to point at different parts of the display. They possess an ancient biological ability. They can enter hibernation in extreme cold. Their bodies shut down almost completely. They need no food, no water, no air. They can survive in this state for months. "This is known," the Prime Speaker Aurel said softly, "but we have not used this ability in thousands of years." "We can teach your people to use it again," said. "Our Nam-Gi is prepared to travel to your world and begin training immediately." She changed the display to show thousands of small satellites surrounding the planet. "These are heat-sink satellites. We will build 4,000 of them and place them in precise orbits around Prime. They will absorb the heat from the explosion and redirect radiation away from the surface." 4,000 satellites in 90 cycles. The representative made his grinding laugh sound. "Impossible. Even our factories could not build so many so quickly." "Human factories alone cannot build them either," admitted. "But we are not asking to do this alone. We are asking every species to contribute. They have the best metalworking technology. They have the most precise guidance systems. They have the most advanced calculations. Together, we can build what we need." The hall fell silent. Species helping each other was common in small ways, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, but this would be cooperation on a scale never seen before. One continued the presentation. "Once the population is in hibernation and the satellites are in place, we will position explosive charges on one side of the planet. When the star explodes, We will detonate these charges at exactly the right moment. The combination of our explosives and the shockwave from the star will push the planet out of the danger zone. Push the planet. The representative's tentacles waved with agitation. Where would it go? Here, displayed a nearby star system. Prime will travel for approximately 6 cycles through space. It will then enter orbit around this stable star. The journey will be cold and dark, but they will sleep through it. When they wake up, they will have a new sun. Hai stood up slowly. Her silver skin reflected the light from the holographic display. This plan requires perfect timing, perfect coordination, and perfect execution. If anything goes wrong, 12 billion people die. Yes, one said simply, we know the risks. How can you be confident that this will work? Asked. Your species has never attempted anything like this. Stepped forward, her hologram flickering slightly. Permission to share some human history. Nodded. The display changed to show images from Earth's past. Ancient stone pyramids rose against a desert sky. 5,000 years ago, humans built these structures using only simple tools. Experts said it was impossible, but thousands of workers labored together, stone by stone, and created something that still stands today. The image changed again. A small metal craft sat on a gray, dusty surface. 60 years before we discovered space travel, humans reached their moon using technology less powerful than the device I am using to speak with you now. Scientists said it could not be done. We did it anyway. More images appeared, doctors in masks, trucks carrying supplies, people receiving medicine. When a disease spread across our entire planet, we developed protection for it in record time. Factories that made cars started making medical equipment. Scientists shared information freely. Governments worked together. We saved millions of lives because we refused to accept death. Look directly at Hai. Humans are not the species. We are not the strongest. Our technology is young and simple, but we have one ability that has saved us again and again. When enough is at stake, we do not give up. We work until we collapse. We find ways where there are no ways. We refuse to accept impossible. The hall was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the small human hologram. Prime Speaker Aurel rose from his seat. His old bones creaked, but his voice was steady. You would do this for us. Risk your resources, your people, your reputation in the galaxy, for a species you have known for only 40 years. One looked at the old with genuine warmth. 40 years of friendship, 40 years of your music playing in our homes, 40 years of your artists inspiring our children, 40 years of kindness whenever our species met. He paused. That is more than enough reason. Aurel's eyes filled with moisture. A single tear rolled down his blue face. I have lived for 200 years. I have seen many things, but I have never seen such stubbornness, one offered with a small smile. Hope, Aurel finished. I have never seen such hope. Hai looked around the hall. This decision is too important for one person. The assembly will vote. Those who support allowing humans to attempt this plan, signal now. Lights began to appear across the hall, blue lights for yes. One by one, species voted. There were first, then smaller species that had remained silent throughout the discussion. The representative hesitated. Stone fingers tapped against stone arms. Finally, he too signaled yes. If this fails, humans will be blamed for the death of 12 billion people. They are willing to risk everything. We should at least be willing to let them try. When the voting ended, counted the lights. Her expression showed surprise. The vote is unanimous. All 47 species support the human proposal. She turned to one. Ambassador, Doctor, the fate of the people is now in human hands. You have 90 cycles. Do not waste a single moment. One bowed deeply. We will not fail. As he left the platform, representatives from dozens of species approached him. They offered ships, factories, workers, supplies. They would build satellite frames. that would provide guidance chips, that would calculate exact positions for everything. Watch from her hologram, tears forming in her eyes. She had asked for help, and the entire galaxy had answered. Back on Earth, her team was already preparing. Ships were being loaded. Engineers were reviewing designs. The clock was running. 90 cycles. That was all they had. 90 cycles to save a world. But as one looked around at the representatives now working together, he felt something he had not felt in days. Confidence. Not because the plan was perfect. It was far from perfect. But because for the first time in galactic history, every species was working toward the same goal. And when humans led that kind of effort, impossible things became possible. They tried everything, only humans succeeded. The first satellite launched from Earth on day 3. By day 10, satellites were launching from 17 different planets. Factories that had never built anything for space were now producing parts around the clock. Workers who had never met aliens were now taking instructions from beings made of stone and light and water. Jin had not slept more than 2 hours at a time since the project began. Her office was filled with maps showing supply routes across the galaxy. Red lines connected planets. Green dots showed delivery points. Yellow warnings marked potential delays. "The shipment is late," her assistant reported. "Their cargo ship had engine problems." "Redirect the backup supplies," Jin ordered without hesitation. "They can cover the gap until the ship is repaired." The backup was already used yesterday, when we lost 3 satellites in a solar flare. Jin closed her eyes for just a moment. Problems never stopped. Every solution created new problems. Every fixed issue revealed hidden issues. This was the nature of large operations. But this operation was larger than anything she had ever managed. "Contact the," she said. "Ask if they can spare any transport ships. Tell them we need help." On Prime, Nam-gi stood before a crowd of 10,000 in one of their great assembly halls. He had given this presentation 42 times now, in different cities across the planet. His voice was tired, but his message was clear. "Hibernation is not something to fear," Gi said through his translator device. "Your ancestors used this ability to survive the coldest winters. It is written into your biology. It is part of who you are." An elderly raised a trembling hand. "I was a child the last time my grandmother spoke of hibernation. She said it felt like falling into a dream that never ended. I am afraid I will not wake up." Gi walked closer to the old one. "I understand your fear, but you will wake up. Human medical teams will be waiting when you do. We will have blankets and warm drinks and food. You will open your eyes to a new sun and a new sky, and the first thing you will see is someone who cares about you." Tears fell from many eyes. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of hope mixed with fear, the kind that comes when someone offers you a chance you never expected. In orbit above Prime, Du worked on satellite positioning. His small ship moved between the growing network of heat-sink satellites, checking angles and adjusting orbits by tiny amounts. Each satellite had to be in exactly the right place. A mistake of even a few meters could create a gap in the shield. "Satellite 2847 is drifting," he muttered into his communicator. "Adjusting now." His hands moved across the controls. The satellite shifted, then locked into its new position. Du checked his readings and allowed himself a small smile. Then an alarm sounded. "What is that?" He checked his sensors and his smile disappeared. "No, no, no, no." One of the satellites near the star had exploded. The heat from the dying sun was increasing faster than expected. The satellite's cooling systems had failed. "Doctor, we have a problem," Du transmitted urgently. On Earth, received the message and immediately pulled up the data. Her face grew pale. "The star is destabilizing faster than we calculated. At this rate, it will explode 20 cycles early." 20 cycles. Jin's voice came through the communication system. We cannot finish the satellite network in time. We are already behind schedule. Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of at night, millions of people living their lives, unaware of the drama playing out across the galaxy. She thought about the 12 billion who were counting on her. She thought about her team, working themselves to exhaustion. She thought about Ambassador One, who had trusted her with an impossible task. She could not give up now. "We continue the plan," announced. "We work faster. We skip any step that is not absolutely necessary. We ask for more help from every species. And we do not tell them that the timeline has changed." "Why not tell them?" Guy asked. "Because fear makes hibernation harder. If they panic, many will not be able to enter the sleep state properly. They need to believe we have enough time, so we will make sure we have enough time." The next 50 cycles became a blur of activity. Ships flew in continuous streams between planets. Factories ran without stopping. Workers took shifts so short that they barely remembered sleeping. On day 60, disaster struck again. 3 human engineers were installing satellites near the inner ring when their ship systems overloaded. The explosion killed them instantly. Their names were Park Jun-ho, Lee Mi-young, and Sung-min. They were young. They had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments because they believed in what they were doing. Held a brief memorial service, transmitted to every human working on the project. "They knew the risks," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "They accepted those risks because they believed 12 billion lives were worth saving. We will honor them by finishing what they started." The work continued. On day 70, something unexpected happened. Other species began volunteering for dangerous work. An engineer took a position near the dying star, claiming his stone body could handle the heat better than human flesh. A pilot flew supply runs through unstable space, using her species' superior reflexes to avoid debris. A scientist worked for 30 cycles straight, calculating new satellite positions to account for the changed timeline. "They are inspired by you," one told during one of their communications. "They see humans sacrificing everything for strangers. They want to be part of that." "We are all strangers until we choose not to be," replied. By day 80, the satellite network was complete. 4,000 satellites surrounded Prime like a protective shell. Heat-sink panels faced the dying star. Reflective surfaces pointed toward space. Everything was in position. The hibernation process began on day 82. Cities fell silent one by one. Families gathered together, held hands, and closed their eyes. The temperature dropped as giant cooling systems activated. Blue skin turned pale as hearts slowed down. Guy walked through the empty streets of the capital city on day 85. Snow fell gently from the artificially cooled sky. Every building was dark. Every vehicle was still. 12 billion people slept beneath his feet. "They trusted us," he said quietly into his communicator. "They put their lives in our hands." "Then we had better not drop them," his voice replied. The final charges were placed on day 88. Massive explosives positioned on the far side of the planet aimed to push when the shockwave hit. Do check the calculations one last time. Everything depended on perfect timing. On day 89, all non-essential personnel evacuated. Only monitoring systems remained in orbit. The entire galaxy watched through long-range sensors as the dying star entered its final hours. Du sat in his ship at a safe distance, watching the data streams. The star's core was collapsing. Energy levels were beyond measurement. The explosion was coming. "This is it," he transmitted. "In approximately 12 hours, we will know if we saved a civilization or killed one." On Earth sat in her empty office. Her team had gone home to rest before the final moment, but she could not rest. She could only wait. Somewhere in the cold darkness of space, 12 billion people slept and dreamed of waking up to a new sun. And somewhere in the light of a dying star, the greatest test of human determination was about to begin. They tried everything, only humans succeeded. The star exploded at exactly the moment they had predicted. Even from a safe distance, Du had to shield his eyes from the brightness that filled his ship's windows. Sensors screamed with warnings. Energy readings went beyond their maximum values. For a moment, it seemed like the entire universe was made of light. Shockwave expanding, he reported into his communicator, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Impact with Prime in 7 minutes. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched through sensors and screens. The Galactic Assembly Hall was silent. Hai stood motionless, her silver hands clasped together. Prime Speaker Aurel was not there. He slept with his people, frozen on his, dreaming of a future that might never come. On Earth, Doctor watched the data streams flowing across her screens. Numbers and charts told the story of what was happening light years away. The shockwave was massive, carrying enough energy to destroy 1,000 planets, and directly in its path was a frozen world filled with sleeping innocents. Satellite network activating, she said quietly. Heat sink systems at maximum capacity. The satellites had been placed in perfect formation. As the wave of fire approached, 4,000 machines began to work. They absorbed heat. They deflected radiation. They created a shield around the planet that glowed with the energy they were processing. Du watched his readings carefully. Satellites are holding, temperature rise on the surface is minimal, the shield is working. But the shockwave was only half of the plan. The real test came next. Prepare detonation charges, ordered. The massive explosives on the far side of Prime were armed and ready. Their purpose was simple but terrible. They would add their force to the shockwave, pushing the planet out of its doomed orbit and sending it flying through space toward a new sun. The timing must be perfect, Du said. Too early and the push will be too weak. Too late and the shockwave will have passed. I trust your calculations, replied. Du watched the shockwave approach. Seconds felt like hours. The wave of energy hit the satellite shield and split around it like water around a stone. The planet shuddered but held. Now, Du whispered, detonate now. He pressed the button. On the far side of Prime, 100 massive explosions created a wall of force. The planet lurched. Mountains cracked. Oceans shifted beneath their frozen surfaces. But the frozen felt nothing. They continued to sleep as their world was pushed through the fire of a dying star. Then silence fell. The shockwave passed. The explosions faded. All sensors showed the same thing. Prime was moving. Slowly at first, then faster, the planet sailed through the darkness of space toward its new home. Trajectory confirmed, Du reported, his voice breaking with emotion. Prime is on course for the target star system. Estimated arrival 6 cycles. In the Galactic Assembly Hall, the silence broke into cheers. Species that had been enemies for centuries embraced each other. The representative made a sound that might have been crying. They swam in excited circles in their tank. Hai raised her hand for silence. The planet is moving, but we will not celebrate until they wake up safely. The next 6 cycles were the longest any of them had ever experienced. Ships followed Prime at a safe distance, monitoring its progress. The satellite shield remained active, protecting the frozen surface from the cold of deep space. Human medical teams prepared for the largest awakening in history. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Prime entered orbit around its new sun. A yellow star, slightly smaller than the one that had died but warm and stable. It would burn for billions of years. Begin warming procedures, ordered. The satellites that had protected the planet from heat now reflected sunlight onto its surface. Slowly, carefully, the temperature began to rise. Ice that had covered cities for cycles began to melt. Water flowed through empty streets. Nam Gi was on the first ship to land. He stepped out onto the surface of a world that was coming back to life. Steam rose from the ground. The first sounds of movement came from beneath the snow. A door opened nearby. An elderly stepped out, blinking in the unfamiliar light of a new sun. He looked at the sky with confusion, then at the human standing before him. "Did it work?" the old one asked. Guy smiled, tears running down his face. "It worked. You are safe. All of you are safe." Across the planet, billions began to wake up. They emerged from their homes to find human teams waiting with blankets, food, and warm drinks. Medical stations had been set up in every major city. Translators helped explain what had happened. Prime Speaker Aurel was among the last to wake. He was very old, and his hibernation had been deep. When he finally opened his eyes, he saw a young human woman standing beside his bed. "Where am I?" he whispered. "You are home," she replied. "A new home with a new sun, but still home." Aurel turned his head to look out the window. A yellow star hung in a blue sky. It was not the sun he had known all his life, but it was warm and bright and alive. "The humans," he said slowly, "they actually did it." The young woman nodded. "We did it together, all of us, every species in the galaxy." In the Galactic Assembly Hall, a special session was held to honor those who had made the impossible possible. Ambassador One stood at the center platform one final time, with Doctor beside him in holographic form. High rose to speak. For thousands of years, the Galactic Assembly has believed that wisdom comes with age, that the oldest species know the most, that the youngest have little to teach us. She paused, looking at the human delegation. "We were wrong. Humans showed us something we had forgotten," continued. "That determination matters more than technology. That courage matters more than calculations. That hope, even in the face of impossible odds, can change the fate of worlds." She turned to face One directly. "When every other species had given up, humans refused to accept defeat. You took a problem we called impossible and you solved it with stubbornness, sacrifice, and heart. The live today because of you." Aurel stepped forward, supported by two young. He moved slowly but with purpose until he stood before One. "I am 203 years old," Aurel said. "I have met many species. I have seen many wonders, but I have never seen anything like what your people did for mine." He reached out and took One's hand in his own. "How can we ever repay you?" One thought for a moment, then he smiled. "Send us more of your music, it is very beautiful." Aurel laughed, a warm sound that filled the hall. "You saved 12 billion lives and you ask only for music." "Music is never only music," One replied. "It is connection, it is friendship, it is the reminder that we are not alone in the universe." In the weeks that followed, the story of the rescue spread across the galaxy. Species that had never paid attention to humanity began to study human history. They learned about the pyramids and the moon landing and the pandemic response. They learned about human art and music and poetry. They learned about the strange determination that made humans refuse to give up even when every logical calculation said they should. And they learned something else, something that changed how the galaxy viewed the young species from a small blue planet. They learned that the most dangerous thing about humans was not their weapons or their technology. It was their hearts, their stubborn, foolish, magnificent hearts that refused to accept that anyone was beyond saving. Doctor returned to her office after the celebrations ended. She looked at the photos on her wall, her team, the satellites, the frozen planets sailing through space, and a new photo that had just arrived, 12 billion standing under a new sun, looking up at the sky with wonder. She smiled and began preparing for the next emergency, because somewhere in the galaxy, someone would need help, and when they did, humanity would be ready. They always were.